Hey guys, Sifu Les Clements, Black Dragon Kung Fu here. Thanks for watching. So, I decided to take the time to do this video, talk a little bit about the 4 basic weapons in Shaolin Kung Fu that you learn. Generally, anywhere around the world you go to Shaolin Kung Fu schools, the first 4 weapon sets will be pretty similar. Sometimes they will be different. Keep that in mind. If it's a specialized system, it may not be any of these 4. Usually these 4 are they're the most basic ones. So anyway, the Rattan Staff, you've heard me talk about this. The staff is probably one of the oldest weapons in the world, next to the club and a big rock. So the staff being made of rattan, we know that rattan is very flexible, yet it's still very hard. And we can hold the staff, the Rattan Staff. There's different grips we can use. We can use the asymmetrical grip here, right? This is the asymmetrical grip, right? Then we can use the symmetrical grip. This is for our flowers and so forth, right? All the way out. So I go out. See, the flower. Simple motion, arm over arm, old technique, or arm under arm, right? So, the staff, being flexible and hard, is very versatile. And on the battlefield, older days, the staff was the one. Then later it went to the spear, then blades. So early on, it would have been a very effective weapon, even later on against certain weapons. Now, what about a staff against a sword? I've mentioned this before. Depends on the level of the one using the staff against the one with the sword. So people will say the staff is more effective than the sword if they see the staff win. But if they see the sword win, they'll think the sword is more effective, when the truth is the person who won was more effective with the weapon. Each weapon has the same potential, No weapon has an advantage over any others that is that will not allow any possibility of prevailing. No weapon will guarantee defeat because of its ineffectiveness, because it has such a great potential, every weapon, if that makes sense. So, with that being said, the staff, wonderful weapon. The first. Now, the second weapon we learn in Kung Fu. The Chinese broadsword. Okay? Now, the broadsword, in the ancient world, and even today in modern practice, you see a tassel was hanged down, usually red. Red tricks the eye, high speeds, tricks the eyes at really fast, high speeds. Then the tassel could also be wrapped around the wrist to keep from dropping the weapon. The tassel would also soak up blood. And in the old days, the end of the tassel sometimes would have a large pellet or BB on the end, right? Some would have spikes on them so they could pop that weapon out. It'd be like a handkerchief with a BB on the end. Put an eye out with it, another weapon. So the broadsword, being a single-edged weapon, I hold this way. See? Now I can block with this because this is the flat, right? So you can block with the broadsword here, and this is also access. So, you hear that rattle? This rattle? This rattle is a teacher, okay? So people would think, wow, this thing needs to be tightened up. I've heard it a lot. I've heard this hundreds of times. Sifu, my broadsword is loose. It needs to be tightened. Right when we get it out of the box, when we order it, right? No, we want it loose. That's the point. This is a teacher. So if you saw my video about knocking the candle out with the hand, you have to be very soft to do that. You can't do it with tense muscles. So the broadsword is the same. I'm gonna tense my muscles up real tight and try to do this motion and see if you can, how much of this rattle you hear, okay? See? Now it's powerful, it's a hard swing, but it has no sensitivity in it, no flexibility, no ability to come back, to recover, see? Now, completely loose, listen to the rattle. Hear that? Or Hear that? Ching, 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 ching. That's what it is, because that teaches when the rhythm of that rattles steady, like the way it was sounding when I was doing that, you understand the weapon and your muscles are loose. So remember, leopard teaches us to have loose muscles. So the leopard is responsible for the development of the broadsword. Now the broadsword generally corresponds to tiger because of its single edge represents the slashing, right? So, and it's curved representing the circular energy of tiger as well, or the curved arcing energy. So that's the broadsword. Remember, broadsword, you have to be very careful when you hold it, when you block, especially if it's a real one because of the thumb here, right? So if it's a real one, you can tuck like this, but if you don't understand the broadsword, really, you got no business messing with a real one. Get a practice one. You do it with this, okay? So that's the broadsword, the second weapon in Kung Fu we learned. Now the third weapon we learn in Kung Fu corresponds to the snake, and that's the spear. See, flexibility. Now, in the hands of a tiger stylist, the spear is going to look one way, right? It's going to be heavy, powerful, strong. In the hands of a snake, it's going to look different. See, in the hands of a snake, it's going to be wavy. See? Basic idea. Snake staff. So, the red tassel, soaked up blood, tricksy eye at high speeds, protecting the shaft from getting drenched with blood so the weapon would get too heavy, would drop on the battlefield. So remember, in combat, in these kind of wars in the ancient world, the ground would have been slick with blood. Armor would have been soaked. Warriors would have been soaked from head to toe in blood. Blood could have been ankle deep, maybe more, who knows. But very important factor to think about when going into battle. How do you keep your weapon dry or protected when the blood is flowing? So, kind of silly, I know. Bunch of young little boys killing each other for senseless reasons of the ego. Well, men and women have to defend ourselves too. So, with that being said, the spear, like I say, corresponds to the snake. And what an interesting thing, because there's another type of spear that corresponds even more to the snake. The spear itself corresponds to the snake because it's flexible, like the rattan, and we're sliding. See, it's a sliding motion. Sliding represents shedding, like snakes shed skin, right? So I'm sliding. See that sliding? Or here, sliding. So anyway, that's the spear. Now the second type of spear that represents snake, even more specifically, is the snake spear. Now, is this edge curved just because it looks like snake and that's really cool? Like Batman has a picture of a bat on his shirt? No, because nothing in Kung Fu is for show except for Wushu, which is modern day performance Kung Fu, which is not combat oriented. It comes from combat moves, but it's made just for performance, okay? They're not fighters, but they're very flexible, good shape. So, same thing with the staff, or the spear, the Wushu, the snake spear. See, Wushu uses weapons like these, and they have real flashy colored uniforms. Like I said, they're performance, but all these moves are based on real movements. They just don't practice the art of fighting with them. They're more about forms, like I said. So the reason for the curve, well, it's not cosmetic. It's not made to look cool. What is it? Well, it's deflective. It's very hard to get a solid strike with a sword against this. You can also see this little tip, how it hooks. You can hook weapons. It's very subtle, but you can hook right over the top of weapons with that. You can roll down and you can hook. This is really nasty right here in a war. Now, Sounds brutal, but we're talking about warfare in the ancient world. Today, these weapons are only just for show. We only practice with them to honor the tradition. I don't say only, we practice with the weapons to honor the tradition and to train our bodies. Hand-eye coordination, everything else, because the weapons are a big part of training for health and self-defense, just like all the rest of the things in Kung Fu. So this spear, you see the same red tassel? Now, in the old days, this would have been an iron shaft, which was the next evolution of the rattan spear in combat, would have been the iron shaft with a longer blade, right? So also, when it was really sunny outside, when the sun was gleaming, this would be shined to a mirror finish, just like the two swords I demonstrated. So in the sun, they could blind you with it if you weren't careful. So you see some of these warriors in the ancient day in pictures or drawings, and they talk about it, they would have these like face shields. A lot of them were like this black silk that they could see through like a screen, stuff to protect from the glare. I mean, these people were very deceptive, and that's what war is deception. So is self-defense. So every self-defense situation, if it gets physical, is war. So remember that. And the brutality of self-defense all depends on the level of your opponent. So some opponents, you may not have to hurt too bad. You may can set them down. Other opponents, if they're really good, you may have to take it to the highest level. But the best trick is to always walk away, if you can. If you can't, that's another story. So anyway, this is just the second version of the spear. Now this one is not as long as a rattan spear. And there were different lengths of spears. At some eras, the spears were shorter. If they were guarding narrow corridors where there wasn't a lot of room to move, they'd have these little smaller spears. Smaller spears sometimes with a larger head. So you would see that, the evolution of the weapons that were based on the terrain and the environments that they were fighting in. So that's the spear, the third one. I just demonstrated two different types, right? So the fourth and the last weapon of the first basic four that we learned in Shaolin Kung Fu, the long sword, okay? The long sword, double-edged, straight sword. So this specific long sword was given to me by my good friend Sifu David Leong, who is generously allowing me to teach in his school. I'm very grateful for. One night we were in his office and he said, Sifu Les, I have some swords here on the wall and I want you to have one, so pick one of these. And this is the one I chose. And I was very grateful for that. So what this is it's a lion's head. So a lion represents a certain era and a certain concept. Usually the lion is associated with royalty or imperialism. And that would happen, that would change a lot in China based on the culture and the times. So the long sword, I cannot hold like a broadsword like this, right? If I hold a long sword like I hold a broadsword, I'm gonna get cut. No good, look at that. The whole arm would lop right off. So how do I hold a long sword? Not like this. I'll hold it this way. Okay. Now I can use it like this. So yes, now I can block, but it's gotta be deflective blocks and you've gotta be fast. So you could block another blade like this, right here. But see, I can't do it this way, look at that. I'd cut my arm off if I did that. It's gotta be here and here. See, that angle is tilted. So it's a grazing technique. So it's not there long. We're not messing around. The second we block, second we come out, see how I'm, snake's mouth going straight to the sword. Snake's mouth going straight to it. Grab. See how I cover these two fingers just like this? Now I pull out. So I go block, cut, pull right out. Or now, the tassel. What is the purpose of the tassel? Well, first of all, this one is yellow. Now, usually the tassels are red to trick the eye at high speeds, like I mentioned, to soak up blood, right? But the yellow tassel symbolizes strength of the lion, the sun, right? The lion is a solar creature. So, just like the leopard who rules the fire element, in some systems the lion could be the ruler of the fire. The lion is also symbolized as the sun, Leo. But in the system that I teach, it's just the leopard that rules the fire element, but the lion, it would be equally fitting. So there's not a lot of limitations and restrictions when you really understand it. So the yellow tassel represents the sun energy, but the long sword is a moon energy weapon. See, because it's flexible. Heavy weapons are sun weapons, solar, male energy, strength, big heavy axes and pikes and long heavy weapons like that, two-handed swords, big things like that, solar weapons, the male strength energy weapons. Now, weapons that are flexible, that bend, that are fast and lean, these are, and usually they're silver color or gleaming like the lunar essence of the moon that would polish them. You see the glare coming off of that? Same thing. See, it reflects the sunlight back in the eyes, just even a little bit there, not much. On a sunny day though, it's something else. See, so weapons that are flexible are moon weapons. Hard, unyielding weapons are solar weapons. So we have hard male energy, yang, balanced with the yin. So this is a sun and moon sword in a lot of ways. The long sword itself represents the moon because of its flexibility, which is water. And the other weapons that are heavy that do not yield would represent the sun. So what would happen if I had a long sword that did not bend and yield? See, this one will bend. In the ancient world, they had plenty of long swords that were solid, that did not bend. They were male solar weapons. So it's not that the long sword itself is a lunar weapon, it's the hardness of the weapon that determines whether it's sun or moon, whether it's strength or flexibility in purpose, and both are crucial. If you're missing one, it could be lethal. So anyway, the tassel is a teacher like the rattle on the broadsword, because if I'm tense, like I was saying earlier, if I'm tense, like the video that I was talking about when I did the broadsword, about the rattle if you're too tense. See, with the long sword, it's not the sound of the rattle that teaches, it's the direction of the tassel. So watch the tassel if I'm too tight. See, that tassel, it's not flowing right. The tassel, if you're too tight, it could be hitting you in the face, flopping everywhere. The tassel, see how that tassel moves? The tassel follows the blade. Tassel is going to follow the blade with the long sword, right? So same thing in the ancient world. The tassel could also trick the eye. It was also a distracting thing, see? So that is pretty much the basic fundamentals of the longsword, as well as the other four. So with that in mind, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, hit me up in the email below. If you like this video, if you found it helpful or informative, click the like button. Even better if you can subscribe. Okay, Seafood Les Clements out.